Hi Kawan, welcome to EDCReady. Today I am going to be talking about every locking mechanism that I have in my collection, and I want to tell you which one is my absolute favorite locking mechanism. Now, I have a few criteria when it comes to the locking mechanism. The first of which is that, is it fidgety? Number one, can I flick it with both hands and with multiple fingers? Number two, is it fall shutty? I do enjoy a smooth fall shutty knife. Number three, is it simple? The simpler a locking mechanism is, the more foolproof it is. Number four, is it easy to take apart? And number five, is it strong enough for daily use? So let's start with the last item here. Is it strong enough for daily use? Now, in short, almost every locking mechanism is strong enough for daily use. This is the liner lock, is one of the most basic locks out there, and this guy is definitely going to be useful enough for everyday use because I am using a pocket knife for its intended purposes. I am not trying to split wood or hang pig carcasses off of the lock mechanism or like chop through any tree or whatever. I'm using it for cutting paper, cardboard, creating props using styrofoam, so on and so forth. So all of these are good to go. Next up, is it fidgety? Now, there are many fidgety knives on the market. For example, we have this. This is the Gonzo, and it uses a G-lock, which is actually just an axis lock that has been rebranded. And they can't do that because it is legal. Another fidgety action is a frame lock. So a frame lock, if it's done well, will nicely pop out of location that it is set in. Next up, we have this guy. This guy, very strong, but it is, however, not very fidgety because it is a bad lock. Some of the fidgetiest knife I have is this guy. This is the ProTech Malibu, and I also have the much more budget option, CJRB Pyrite. And these guys are button locks, which means is that it's very smooth, has a nice action. I can open it in multiple ways. I can fidget with it this way. Yeah, I can flip it open. I can, on the thumb stud version, flick it. I can spidey flick it, and so on and so forth. Last but not least, I have the compression lock, which is also super fidgety because it is fall shutty. Look at that, free swinging. Okay, you can open it with multiple fingers. You can spidey flick it. You can thumb flick it. You can pinch it and open it up. You can even, on some of these knives, if you have a softer detent on this button lock, just flick it open like that if you really want to. Although some people don't like that. I'm not a particular fan of that, but just FYI, you can do that on some locking mechanisms. Next up, is it simple? Simple means that it is going to be very difficult to mess up. For example, a liner lock is very simple. So is a frame lock. Very simple. All it is a piece of metal that bends into the tang of the blade to stop it from closing. And because of that simplicity, it's very difficult to mess it up when you disassemble it and put it back together. And it's also very difficult for it to break over time. Here's an example of a locking mechanism that is not so simple. This guy, this is the Gonzo, uses the G-lock, which is pretty much an axis lock. I've had Omega springs break on my benchmates before, which is why I don't have benchmates anymore. However, Gonzo springs are actually a lot stronger. I've had this guy much longer than I've had my bug out before, and none of the springs have broken. And whereas in the benchmate, both of the springs have broken. I have one more knife, if I can find it. There we go. This is the Demco 8020.5. Now, it is a great strong lock. However, it does have one flaw, which is that it uses a spring somewhere in here to kind of push this thing forward, which locks the knife in place. The unfortunate problem is that once you take it apart, if you're not careful, like what I did, I was not careful about the spring tension, the spring flew off, and for months now, I can't find the spring. I will one day hopefully get a replacement spring, but until that day happens, this knife is still out of commission. Last but not least, or second last, is that is it simple to take apart and put back together? This is pretty straightforward. Simple to take apart, simple to take apart, simple to take apart, simple to take apart. All these are easy to put back together. The only problem is that if the action or the lock has springs, like this guy has a spring, this guy has a spring, that makes it a little bit more complicated to take apart. This guy is so much easier than this guy. Axis locks are very difficult to take apart and put back together. So I tend to do the taking out the pivot and then pulling out the blade, clean it up, and then reinserting the blade and then screwing it back together. Just FYI. Last but not least, is it a strong lock? I think I already mentioned this. So that was the last point. So of all these locking mechanisms, which one is my favorite? And the only one that satisfied every criteria is the compression lock. Till this day, and I'm a guy who likes looking at different locks. They are my favorite part of a pocket knife. when it comes to like looking at new stuff and buying new stuff. Compression locks are the best because it is very strong. You have a piece of steel here that goes between the tang of the blade and the stop pin here. So to break this knife or to break the lock, you gotta compress that metal. Metal is very difficult to compress. It is fidgety. It is drop shutty. It is easy to take apart and put back together. It functions very simply because similar to a liner lock, sometimes a compression lock is called an inverted liner lock. Similar to a liner lock, it's just a piece of steel that goes and hits the tang of the blade. Same thing here. This is nothing. There's no springs here. This is just a piece of steel that bends into position once you open it. It's strong, it's fidgety, it's easy to take apart, easy to put back together, it functions very easily. And that's why, until today, I've tried many locking mechanisms. The compression lock is still my favorite one of the bunch. Thanks guys, let me know in the comment section what is your favorite locking mechanism and stay ready.